Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another wonderful kick-ass conversation with Louise and Kim. I am Kim. That is Louise.
The other one.
And we are joined by the none other than look, see, it's live and I am tripping all over myself. Jen. We're joined by Jen Vertanen, and we will learn more about Jen in a little bit. But we want to start off today, like we do every week, with what are we celebrating? What are we celebrating today?
I am celebrating flexibility, not body movement, but flexibility in my business and how I've designed it to be a little location independent, to be able to take my show on the road. Sometimes I do feel like, right, like what is it? I imagine that it's a one woman show, right, where I'm doing all of the things all of the time, and I get to take that with me everywhere I go. So that's a little bit of my celebration this week. I love being flexible and being able to go where I need to, where I want to, and still run my business. So that's been really fantastic this week.
Louise Neal, Eve Ensler 2.0.
I'm celebrating the other flexibility in that I got back to my yoga mat last week, and I turned 53 tomorrow, and my joints on vacation told me it was time to get back to that. So I'm celebrating that for sure. Getting my bendy stretchy on.
Bendy flexies, love it.
Yes.
And welcome to the 53 Club. I personally, I turned 53 in March, and it has been pretty good so far.
I'm looking forward to it.
Right? I spent my 53rd birthday walking up. To me, it was a mountain. It probably to other people was a hill. But it was a 5-kilometer hike in the snow with no paths that you could see slide, right? So yeah, it's welcome to 53. It's awesome.
Thank you.
It's all a mindset anyways, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
It is. My celebration. So I was before we move on, because I was about ready to move on. I am celebrating flexibility. I am celebrating the flexibility of time, of trying to really live into how I create rhythms and routines, and how I am a flexible human being who can shift those routines and rhythms around to fit what I need best. I am the kind of person who likes to build the scaffolding of a plan, of a routine, and then likes to have flexibility within it to do what I want to do. And as I've learned that within my business, within my family, within my life, it's really allowed me, it's kind of like I'm flinging around on the monkey bars of the scaffolding and just having fun inside of it. So that feels like a really good thing to celebrate as well today. So
I love it. Look at all that.
I know, flexibility.
Too bad that's not the theme of today's episode.
Well, we will see how that all works in, because we just never know sometimes where our conversations go.
Truth.
For sure. But so I get to introduce Jen today. Jen, we met just pre-pandemic, before the world changed, and we met in our coach training at CLCC in California, and that was just such a special time for me. And I would have to say that everyone I met on that weekend in Petaluma holds a special place in my heart. So I'm really glad that you're here today for Kick-Ass Conversations. And I love your podcast, so I know we're going to have a great one.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Fantastic. So let me do a quick little intro. So Jen Vertanen is a certified life coach and creator of the Self Method. And she's on a mission to help unhappy-ish women, typically 40-ish plus, stop breaking, if there ever is, and start living a life that has you jumping out of bed, excited to do it all over again. Mission dear to my heart as well. Jen's been on the front lines with her own personal transformation from loneliness and self-loathing to not only loving but liking herself. and her life, as well as the thousands of lives she's helped throughout coaching and podcasting. Using her signature candor, humor, and unique approach to doing the work, Jen wants the world to know it's never too late and you're never too old, but you do kind of need to get going.
Yep.
When Jen's not coaching or thinking up new exercises for clients, you can find Jen unwinding at the end of the day, curled up with a glass of dry red and a cozy blanket, how I spend my winters, for sure.
I'm all about the creature comforts.
I love it. And you mentioned one of my fave shows too here in your bio about binging Ted Lasso.
Oh, yeah.
So good.
So happy it's back.
I know.
Well, I love it. And you're joining us from St. Paul, Minnesota today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So really glad you're here. Tell us a little bit. So, as I was reading that bio, it's like it's all of you and who you are kind of weaved into what you're putting out in the world through coaching and through your podcast. But I want to know how you ended up doing what you're doing. I'm fascinated by our career journeys because they're never a straight line.
Yeah, no. It's full of twists and turns. So yes, I'm a coach. I'm also, I do have a day job. I'm one of the odd ones who absolutely loves my day job too, as a project manager. And so I've been mentoring since I would say high school, when I was the one who would take kids under my wings, if you will, kids that maybe weren't as popular, had some hard stuff going on. So I've been coaching and mentoring, I think, my whole entire life. But as a software development project manager, I had done a lot of team coaching. But I had turned 41. So this was back in 2011. I was just burnt out in my day job. And I told my husband, I can't go back in. If I'm going back into the office, I'm giving my 2 weeks. I'm done. And I decided at that point in time that I wanted to become a health coach. So I went through Institute of Integrative Nutrition and became a health coach. And I didn't really like that. I tried it on for size, didn't fit. I was like, oh, I'll be a business coach, right? I've worked in corporate my whole life. I'll do that. That was okay. It didn't light me up. Then I was like, I'll be a life coach and then I'll be a business life coach. And now I am a life coach. I have settled upon that for the last number of years. But that's been my journey here. And after spending 15 months back in 2011, not working in corporate, we made a family decision to put our daughter in private school. So I had to make some money again because I wasn't making money as a health coach because I didn't really like it. And so I went back into corporate, but I went back in with a new set of boundaries and what I was willing to put up with and not willing to put up with. And I've just had a really wonderful career. I love that I have both a career and a calling, right? The career being the software development project manager, the calling being coaching. Like I said, I've done it my whole entire life.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I love that you, I love so much of this, but the part of blending the career and the calling, because so often we feel like we put a whole lot of pressure on what we do to carry both of those things. It has to make us the money that we want to make, and it has to be something that we're passionate about, we're called to do, and is most meaningful in our lives. And how do we find a way to blend those? And for you, it was blending them by, this is my day job and this is what I do in my other parts of my time. So finding the ways to do that. I also have to say that all of the ishes, because ish means something else also in vernacular these days, I love that you put all the ishes in there.
I was laughing about that as we were reading it. It just shows I have an ADHD brain and it's very hard to compartmentalize into this is what I'm going to focus on. And so me putting the ish it allows my brain to flex as I want to flex, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's whether you're multi-passionate, which is how I define myself, whether or not you are ADHD or have any other identity marker that you're putting out there, creating, and you use this word too, boundaries for
Mhm.
yourself and saying, this is right. It's kind of that scaffolding that I was talking
Yeah.
about at the beginning.
Well, I loved when you said that. That's very much how I approach my team work at my day job. Is I think of it as I want to provide a large sandbox that kind of has some boundaries and constraints, but how we as a team choose to play in that sandbox, that's where the creativity, that's where the art comes into play. Right. So I love that. I love your visual of the scaffolding and just giving yourself a little bit of boundary and constraint and then playing within that.
Yeah. Play is huge. We talk
Oh,
about it a
for
lot.
sure. Yeah. If
Yeah.
I'm not playing, you don't want to know a Jen that doesn't play.
Amen.
Let's just say that.
Yeah. I love your career story too. And you talk about like how do you try things on, right? And we often don't know. We can like it's the sweater hanging in the store, and you're like, oh yeah, that is going to be so great. It's going to look fantastic on me. And then we try it on, and it doesn't feel right, or it doesn't look how we expected. And then oftentimes we're kind of like married to the purchase almost when we haven't
Right.
purchased it. You can still take it off and put it back.
Yeah.
But oftentimes we feel really somehow committed to that. Oh, to just saying like, that's what I want to do, or I'm going to love that. And then you try it on and you experiment around it, and it's not at all what you imagined.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It makes me think of, I just went through my closet last weekend and pulled out clothes that have been in there since, 2011.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't worn them for years. It created so much space in my closet.
Absolutely. It's so funny. So we moved from Chicago to Montreal 18 months ago. We're getting ready to move from Montreal. We think next it's going to be kind of make a decision quickly here, but it's not really 100% up to us. But we're planning to move out to Vancouver, the Vancouver area. And thinking about going through another move. Like, I can't wait to go through everything again and be like, no, because there is that place of knowing what works for you now.
Mhm.
That it keeps working, but those things that don't work for you now that used to work for you. Like, there are things in my closet that I've had for years that I'm like, why do I still have, like, why did I schlep that to Montreal? Like, why did I do that? How could I possibly have thought that I would suddenly want to wear that again?
I always think of the toddler with the dirty diaper. They're just kind of dragging it around. Like, they're just kind of dealing with it because they have better stuff to do, right? Like play and snack. And I'm like, what in my dirty diaper is ready to go?
Oh my gosh. That's a visual.
Sorry for that visual.
I love that. Yeah. And it can get stinky, right? When we carry it around, and we need to just put it down.
For sure. So how do you figure out when it's time to put it down, when it's too stinky, when it's too, like, how do you figure that out?
Yeah, I think about when it's impacting more than one area in your life, right? So I'm very much about doing self check-ins often. And this comes from my project management. We check in as teams at the end of every sprint, which is at the end of every two weeks. What's going well? What didn't go so well? What's keeping us up at night? So I've over the years naturally do that myself. And it's, if something is repeatedly coming up for me, it's time to do the work to either heal it, unravel it, understand it, choose to create new neural pathways around it, what have you. So it's just when it's repeatedly coming up, that's my cue.
Mm.
Yeah, I think too, like when I think about that, like we just don't spend enough time in our lives reflecting, right? We just get those boundaries and those blinders on, and then we're just moving through life, and it's that pause to do that a self-evaluation to say what is working and what do I want to leave behind. Again, I feel like that sweater sometimes, like in our lives, we just are really stuck on hanging on to it, or right, and not really looking at what is this doing for me currently. And just because it had a use doesn't mean it's something I want to bring forward. I think too, like when we think about pivoting and career change and like what do we do next? Like we can't jump from the frying pan into the fire without really looking at like what are those things that I really do want to take forward, and what do I want to leave behind? And I just think like like Kim and I, we spend a lot of time on Fridays, and that's what's great about our like actually doing this podcast on Fridays, is that we take that time to celebrate and we take that time to reflect on a weekly basis, so that we can figure out like, no, those celebrations are things we want to bring forward. And yeah, I just don't think like we do that in project management all the time. We do that in work, right? But we don't do that in our lives.
Yeah. And I think the story that we tell ourselves is we don't have time, right? We live in a chaotic, busy world, and we're so used to that story. I don't have time. I'm too busy. I would say it takes all of a couple of minutes each week for myself to sit down and do this. Now, has that been fine honed through the years? Absolutely. Right. But the difference that it has, or that it makes in your life, is incrementally, exponentially better. And so if you can find that window of 5 minutes to just do some self-inquiry, the results you're going to get are just exponentially better.
Yeah, absolutely. In your bio and in here, you used the term doing the work. Can you talk to us about what the work is?
Oh, yeah. I think the work is anything that you need to do, that you need to go through, experience, what have you, to get to the other side of where you want to be. Right. And so, I'm not prescriptive in that. Like we said, I like to have my sandbox that we play in. That's where my self method comes in. But doing the work, it's so unique to each individual person. But it's making a commitment that, yes, I am going to apply myself. I'm going to bring awareness to the situation. I'm going to challenge myself to get from point A to point B, because point B is so important to me. Right. So whatever that looks like for each individual person, that's what I call doing the work.
Mm-hmm. So I would assume that has a lot of reflection kind of baked into it.
Absolutely. I know we're going to talk about but self-awareness, which is what we're talking about, is like, that's the start, right? Because once you're aware, now it becomes a part of your brain, right? And now you have a choice. You can either do something with it or not. And there is no good, bad, right, or wrong here. It's, am I in my adultness, my humanness, am I going to choose to work on this, or am I going to choose to accept it? Right? Because acceptance, now again, we're making a choice with our adult brain, and it's like, oh, I'm not going to work on that right now. Maybe it doesn't have as big of an impact on my day-to-day life as I think it does. So bringing just loads of awareness, and you can't have awareness if you have the blinders up and you're not doing that self-inquiry. You just can't. The two can't exist together.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a beautiful segue into kind of this self-evaluation that we were talking about today. Having that place of self-inquiry. What are some of the tools that help you get into that space of self-inquiry?
Oh, that is such a great question. To get into the space of self-inquiry, my favorite tool for clients and myself is my future self work. And I know a lot of people do future self, but I take it a step further and I say, what is your 80-year-old self? Like I have, excuse me. I have my clients paint a very detailed picture of their 80-year-old self, right? Because when we're 80, we've reached the end of our career, if you will. Not everyone. I mean, there was a park ranger who started her career at 84, right? But for the most of us, we've kind of reached the end of our days. And what do you want to be reflecting back on? What do you want to still be doing? What do you still want to be living? Right. And so creating this picture of the 80-year-old self, and then mining that for the clues, if you will, the data of how can you bring that into your day-to-day life. And one example of this is my 80-year-old self is very feisty. She is full of color. Like, she's wearing funky earrings, funky, colorful shoes. today me wears a lot of black and white. And again, there's nothing good, bad, right, or wrong with that. I love black and white, but how can I add color? So you notice I have red glasses, right? This is kind of an homage to my 80-year-old self who wants to still be playful and vibrant and lively. So that's one of my favorite tools. Now, if that doesn't work for you, I think it's a tool called sitting in the seat of your soul. And I don't know who to attribute that to, but it's spending 10 minutes in silence and just asking your heart, what do I need to know? The first time I did this, I was very skeptical, but I'm kind of I'll try anything at once sort of person. And literally at 8 minutes in, when I was about to give up, because I'm like, this is ridiculous, all of a sudden my soul was like, blah, 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 blah. I just got a download. I'm like, whoa, that was really powerful. So sitting in silence and not trying to force an answer, I think is a great way to get into self-inquiry. I'd love to hear what works for you too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we get in our way a lot. And right. And so, as you're talking and sharing that, that we think we know what the answer already is. Right. And so like through my NLP training and really like starting to pay attention to the words that you're using on yourself as a place to really explore. Right. There are two words that I love for people to just start paying attention to, and that's should. How many, like, what kind of shoulding are you doing on yourself? Really start to pay attention to not just where you're using it out loud. So that's reinforcing it, right? Not only are you thinking it, but now you're hearing yourself say that, but where in your own, right, in your own silent thoughts are you shoulding? Right, Jen, you mentioned a birthday tomorrow, and I struggled for so many years with birthdays because they were full of shoulds, right? I should be here at this age. I should have this. I should have that, right? And birthdays seem to be a reminder that I wasn't somehow living to this like imaginary expectation that I put on myself, but it was that recognition of like, I should on myself a lot. And so there's that one. And then the other word I love for folks to pay attention to is the but, right? And we just cut ourselves off at the knees when we start talking about, right? Like, I would love to, but, right? I really want that, but, and there's just too many shoulds and too many buts. And we limit our possibilities and we limit our creativity because we feel like we're already stuck in this, right? We already are stuck in this sweater, or we're already stuck in this space, and we can't think creatively outside of that. And so I love the power of words for sure, and just paying attention to what you're saying. And those two words just, I think, are so key and foundational to how we set ourselves up for success.
Yeah. It makes me think of being an objective detective. And you've heard me say a couple of times, it's not good, bad, right, or wrong. It just is, right? And so how can we bring objectivity into looking at our thoughts and what are the things we say to ourselves, and not making it mean anything has gone wrong or that we've done something bad or we're a bad person. It's just, what is my brain offering me? And what do I want to make it mean? That's something we learned in CLCC. Watch what you make it mean, right? It's very true. How can you kind of remove yourself from the emotion and just be really as you look at kind of the data and clues in front of you? I love that.
Yeah. Well, you said the D word.
I love data.
Data. It's all about the data.
It's all just data. It means nothing. It's what you assign to it. Yeah. That brings the meaning. And you get to choose what you assign to it.
Yeah. It's radical acceptance.
Absolutely.
Because when we come to a place of acceptance, we get to actively choose the meaning we attribute to it. Or not. We don't have to give any meaning to it. We just accept, and then we're in choice, and we allow ourselves to be in choice. Louise, I would add one word to that list that you gave, and I would add the word can't. Because when we say we can't do something, we're giving away our power. We're giving away our choice. We're giving away, there's just a hard stop. I can't. And anytime I push up against a can't, whether it's within myself or with one of my clients, I know that's a space that we can lean into to do more self-inquiry. So I, like Louise, I listen to those words as well. It's like, ooh, what's that word about? Where can we open some more self-acceptance, some more radical acceptance, right? And do a little bit more self-inquiry. Jen, I love the 80-year-old. I very often use a very similar thing where it's like, okay, let's get out of the today, because the today is still so much connected with the past.
Yeah,
and
we're so close to it.
Right. And with that, who do I want to be in 5 years? Like most people can say to some relative of like what I want to do, what I want to be. It's usually what I want to be doing, not even who I want to be.
Yeah.
And when you're 80, you remove I think the doing component.
Absolutely.
Right. You know, I'm looking at my mom who's about to turn 80 in like 2 years, year and a half. I look at my mother-in-law who's well into her 80s. They're not focused on doing, they're focused on being.
Right.
Right. They are still doing. Well, my mom is more than my mother-in-law, unfortunately, but like but they're focused on being. And so for me, that access point is, what can I use? What tools? And I have a very large toolbox.
Yep.
What tools can I use to access the being? And that's where, once I get to that space of where I'm not thinking about, and Louise and I have talked about this a lot lately, not asking how, not asking the doing questions, but staying in that place of beingness, that's where self-inquiry can really start and where I can really dive into it.
Absolutely. One of the, first questions would I wake up? And again, this didn't start, like I had to create a habit around this, but how do I want to be today? How do I want to feel today? As I look to the things going on in my day, what energy do I want to bring into those? If I have a particularly sticky conversation I need to have, what energy, like pre-imagining what energy I want to bring into that, right? And it's just another way to start your day in that awareness space.
Yeah, I do something similar, and I found that I was slipping out of it by midday. And so I actually tie it to pulling an oracle card, and I'll put the card in front of me as just it's not that I have to live off of what the card is saying, but it's a reminder that you set this intention earlier. I'm going to use that as my touchstone to return to that.
I have my sweary affirmation cards that my husband got me for Christmas, and I pull one like kind of midday for that same reason. It's like to remind me of who I want to be. Right? Because I mean, let's be honest, life can be really hard and chaotic. I mean, those things are true, and we can be more intentional.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. We give so much of our power away. Right. And, talking about that self-awareness and that self-evaluation, right, comes with that pause or that moment, but to continue, right, to be aware that it isn't just a one and done. So it's something that you just do, right, once a day or once a week or once a month. What we're talking about is this ability to be enough in our bodies to know when we are slipping out of that flow or out of that place, so that we can then do something about it. But I love that, Kim, when you're talking about the doing and the being place, right? It's not, it's a flow, and it takes a little bit of time and practice to be able to tap into, like, I'm not really showing up, right, how I wanted to this morning, or what my intention was. And without that evaluation, without that moment or that awareness, we can miss those opportunities to continue to do that. And it's just like a workout, right? And it does take that practice and that intentionality, and whatever we need to be able to remind ourselves, right, to do those things. Just like, right, every hour I want to get up and I want to do some yoga and I want to stretch and I don't want to be stuck in the seat. It's like the same thing goes for, like, how do we do those mental self-awareness exercises, so that it starts to become easier and easier for us to be able to tap into, right, that knowledge under our necks, right? And what is our body saying, and get out of our heads for a minute.
Yeah. And I think we tend to overthink what that needs to look like. Right. And then we get stuck because we're like, oh, it's too much.
You could have just ended on, we tend to overthink.
Yeah. We make it to be this too big of a thing in our heads to tackle. And it's not. It literally is seconds sometimes of just orienting back to who do I want to be, right?
Mhm.
And however, like you said, Louise, however you need to remind yourself. I've had clients that have set multiple, reminders on their calendar. If it's like doing whatever it takes to make it a habit. Because once it's a habit, you don't have to like think about it. You are the person who does this. And it's so freeing when you get to that space.
And it's from that place of freedom where we gain flexibility,
bringing it all back. I love it. Thanks, Kim.
You're welcome. Well, because I was hearing it and I was like, you're talking about flexibility, you're talking about freedom. And that's what, I primarily work with entrepreneurs. I know Louise works primarily with people who are still in an employment space and where they're being employed by somebody else. And it doesn't matter where you are in that. We all crave freedom.
Yeah.
We all crave it. And freedom comes from acknowledging, accepting, and taking responsibility for our own flexibility. But how do we access it?
Yeah. When core desired feelings came out eons ago, one of my core desired feelings was freedom. And I had this picture in my head that I was traveling the world in, I don't know, like an RV or, it was a very different picture that I didn't even think was possible for me. So I spent years having this incongruity, if you will, I don't even know if that's a word, between what I thought was possible for me and this vision that I had created of what freedom meant. When I actually did my own work, I developed the definition of freedom for me that felt doable, achievable, and did the work to create that sense of freedom, which for me comes from contentment and contentment and safety in my life. I don't, as much as I would love to be traveling the world, every day, all day, I have so much freedom in my life right now because I did the work to, again, feel that contentment and safety and satisfaction and fulfillment. That's what brings me freedom.
I love that.
Yeah. And it's being, not doing, right? My definition of freedom was very much about doing. And when I actually got serious about what it actually meant and looked like for me, it was a being.
I think that's true for most people.
Yeah. We trip on the how.
Yeah.
We trip on that how so much.
Yeah.
Like, and how like it limits our creativity. Like we give our power away. We limit our choices. Like we do all of those things when we're stuck in the how. I don't know how to make that happen. And it's like, make what happen? Like, could we just spend a little time on the what? And the why before we dive into the how? I think the how is that's the easy part. But if we do the work, if we do the what work and the why work, the how it's the easy part. But if we start with the how, we don't move forward at all, and we really get misaligned with our values and how we think we're showing up in the world around those values.
Yeah. It gets super sticky in the why, or in the how. It gets super sticky. I continually find myself stuck in the how. And it's because, right, I know that I am a chronic overthinker.
Yeah.
And my work is an ongoing process and will be until my end of days. That's because it's how I'm wired. I am wired to automatically think of the how. I'm wired to overthink. I'm wired, which causes me to have anxiety, right? And it's who I am and how I show up in the world. I have radical acceptance that that's who I am, and I'm doing the work, right, through self-awareness. I'm doing the work to say that's not what I choose for myself. And so how do I want to show up instead? And so more of my time is now spent not in that space. And yet that will continue to show up, not as a lesson, but that's just who I am.
Yeah. And you can't get to that place of radical acceptance if you don't start with awareness.
Right.
It's literally not possible to accept something about yourself. You have to be aware of it. Right. Yeah. Love that.
Absolutely. So as we're talking about all of this, right, this deep awareness, this self-acceptance and inquiry, we're all, obviously, we've chosen this direction for ourselves and we work on it with our clients. Do you ever come across people who are resistant to do this work?
Oh goodness. Yes. I bet you can guess the answer to that. Absolutely. Not everyone is ready. Not everyone feels safe enough in their lives to go down the path of doing the work, because it will dredge up sometimes some very painful things. Again, it's not good, bad, right, or wrong, but it's, if I have a client that is very resistant, it tells me that they're not feeling safe enough to do that self exploration. And so that's what we're going to work on, right? And in some cases, it might mean referring them out to a therapist who's better equipped to handle trauma, mental health issues, what have you. But I look for readiness in my clients. And again, don't make it mean anything has gone wrong if you're not ready. Yeah, it just means there's some additional work there to do, and that's okay. Like we're never like done, right? Until we're done.
Yeah.
Like I said, my 80-year-old is still like, she might learn a new language for all I know, right? Because that's the mentality I want to have, is that I'm still learning and growing until I'm literally on my deathbed.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's that place of, I see that person, right? I see which direction I want to go. And what I'm not hearing you say, yes, you bought the red glasses as a nod to her, but you're not saying I have to be that person now. How do I become that person? You're not pushing it. You're letting it unfold through that place of awareness. And I kind of think that that's what you were also alluding to with those clients that aren't quite ready, is where are you in your journey, in your process? And what is that next opening for you?
Yeah.
It may not be this level of self-awareness.
Yeah. If your nervous system doesn't feel safe for whatever reason, it could be big T trauma, it could be 1,000 little T traumas. We don't know. But if your nervous system isn't feeling safe, it's very hard to actually go ahead and start building that awareness. And because you don't feel safe, your nervous system isn't able to tell, is that a tiger lurking in the corner, or do I have to have an uncomfortable conversation? Right? To your nervous system, it's all the same thing. And so if that's where we need to start, then like you said, that's just our starting point, right? But I'm not going to expect you to maybe build a vision of your 80-year-old self if you're not feeling safe in your body today.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's that expectation that that's what we do, is we push people to, like, here, you're going to change, all this stuff is going to happen. And so they feel like they need to have all these things ready before they even come to us, versus we actually can help you wherever you are.
Yeah. We start where you're at. Absolutely. You said that you're a natural overthinker. I'm a natural fixer. Like project management, I mean, we talk about we do the how all the time. We're continuing, we're driving projects based on how are we going to get this done. So that's something that I have to be aware of and make sure I'm dialing into it, because people aren't to be fixed. People aren't coming to me saying, fix me. I mean, they might say that, but they don't really mean it. Right? My job is not to fix. And so that's something that I have to dial and keep track of, and not step into fixing, because that's not what they signed up for.
Yeah.
Right. That's not what they want from me. Yeah. They're going to do their work to resolve anything that's going on in their world that they want to make better.
Yeah. And it's interesting, right? Because you're using that fixer part of you in the day job part, right?
Right.
Right. And so you are able to use that as your superpower in one way. And so my chronic overthinking actually is a superpower of mine as well.
Absolutely.
In that it helps because I'm a strategist. I help you strategize things. Well, overthinking is definitely going to be able to help you strategize something.
Right. Yeah. Well, let me just say, some days it does get a little exhausting when I'm like full on fixing and then having to turn it down. And,
yes.
I've learned through the years how to take care of myself so that it's less exhausting.
Another example of how self-awareness, self-inquiry allows you to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that vision too. Like, right. Like there are things that we want to turn up, and when they are too loud, there's a little bit of a shadow side sometimes, depending on our environment or who we're with. And I believe a lot of people think, well, but that's just me, right? Like I'm just going to be the overthinker. I'm just going to be the fixer, and that's fine. And it's like, yes, and you're still a whole bunch of other things too. You still have a real deep toolbox that can allow you to turn down that superpower a little bit and then practice something else.
Yeah.
And find a new resource or find a new tool that can help you in that moment. And that is about reconnecting too with self, right? Because I think we get stuck in this place of, well, I'm not really authentic. If I'm not the problem solver, or if I'm not the fixer all the time, then I'm just like, that's me, and I'm not authentic in that space. And I don't believe that to be true at all. It's like, oh, you get to have a choice to turn the volume down a little bit on that superpower and try something else on and turn that up a little bit, see how it feels, see how it is in that moment. And now you're just expanding your whole toolbox, and you're figuring out how those tools work. You're no longer using a wrench like a hammer, right? You're like, oh no, I actually have a hammer. And so that's all part of this authenticity piece too, I think, that we can get stuck in, and feeling a little bit inauthentic when we're not all the time leaning into our superpowers.
Yeah. And without that awareness, you're taking away your choices, right?
Yeah.
That's literally what you're doing. You're taking away your choices. I love how you said that, Louise.
Yeah. And it brings to mind that idea of zone of excellence and zone of genius, right? Gay Hendrix's work, because very often my overthinking was praised. Right. It was because people wanted to utilize that superpower. And so I got called to do it a lot. And the reality is there was a whole lot more to me than just overthinking. Right. I can be prepared. I can get everybody else prepared. I can do all of that, but that's exhausting. And I don't want to live in that all the time. So what else can I bring online that's more in my zone of genius that fills me up while I'm doing or being it?
Yeah.
So.
Well, on the topic of exhaustion, I think that is such a great way to create awareness is recognizing I'm exhausted and then asking why. Why am I exhausted? And then why am I exhausting? Why am I exhausted? And then keep doing that inquiry of, well, but why, right? It's like we're trying to find the clues in the data, going back to the D word, so that we can do something with them. That's all self-awareness is, right? Is uncovering.
Yeah. All those data points.
Yeah.
For our data junkies. I admit that I love data. I just don't talk about it that way. So this has been a phenomenal conversation. I just looked up at the time and I'm like, holy cow, that went really, really fast.
Yeah.
So what are our golden nuggets? Like, what are we taking away? What are we going to put in our pockets?
For me, it really is the how. Again, in my day job, I have to think of the how. And I love the conversation around how that kind of takes us out at the knees. If we're thinking too much about the how and not and who do I want to be? I think the two can go hand in hand, but I want to start with the who do I want to be? So I'm taking that away.
Yeah, I love that. You said, Jen, you said it a number of times today. It was that it's not good, bad, right, or wrong. And to be able to kind of lean into that and look at whatever's going on from a very non-judgmental space is absolutely a skill and something that we need to practice, that I need to practice. And I'm taking that away throughout this next week is really like, let's just put the judger on the shelf for a moment and see like what is really going on. Like I would need to get back to the data.
The judger stops you in your tracks, right? Where we want to get curious, and you can't do that with judgment.
Not at all.
Yeah,
Not at
absolutely.
all. And I think for me, really, it's the work is never done, right? Although I know that it was really lovely to hear that is the work is never done. We're always a work in progress and a masterpiece at the same time. Thank you very much. But it is where we are right now is the work that we need to be doing right now. And whatever that is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love collecting stories of older people that are doing amazing things, like the woman who wrote 13 stories of women's erotic lives at the age of 80, and the park ranger who retired at 100. Like, what? There's so much possibility and scenarios and opportunities in front of us, no matter our age.
And I will say you get to learn about these fabulous stories if you follow Jen on the socials, because she posts them and they're awesome and they make you feel really good when you read them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jen, where else can people find you?
Yeah, so right now Facebook is my favorite. My personal profile is Jennifer Vertanen. I'm sure the link will be in the show notes. And then I'm on Instagram, but not as much. I'm leaning into Facebook right now and just building community and conversations there.
Right. And they can also check you out over at your website. Is that correct?
Yep, jenvertanen.com.
Okay,
yep.
Perfect. There's the website for people who want the visual, right? All different types of learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you have coming up, going on, that you want to share with us?
Yeah, I am going to be launching my first ever group course called Project Love Your Damn Self, where we dive into all things loving your damn self, which, if you can guess, has a lot to do with awareness and gathering the clues. I don't have a date on that yet. This will be a beta round, which means there's going to be more one-on-one support than would normally be. So if that's something that folks are interested in, I'd love to have a conversation. The easiest way would be either to email me, jen@jenvertanen.com, or hop over to my website and get on my list, take the 80-year-old self quiz, which is just fun, or come say hi on Facebook. But yeah, looking for beta testers, which means a beta price, right? And it means I might make a mistake here or there because I'm learning too. Oh my goodness.
As you saw from the beginning of today's show, we are a mistake-making place. We love mistakes here. Louise, what do we have going on?
We have, as always, you can catch us weekly here on Kick-Ass Conversations. Next week coming up, it's all about where your attention goes. And that's Kim and I getting down and dirty on understanding that and how that can pull us where we need to go or pull us away from where we need to go. Same bat time, same bat channel. So that's where you find us.
Absolutely. So exciting. Jen, this was an absolute joy having you join us. I love following all of your stuff and your antics out in the world, and your 80-year-old self is definitely already showing through. I will tell you that much from this side of the world.
Thank you. I love that it said antics. Yes, antics. I'm full of antics.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We are so glad that you spent some more time with us. We hope that you had your own golden nuggets that you're able to take away with you today. And we hope to see you next week on another kick-ass conversation with Louise and Kim.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.